Part of the nice thing about being on Roosevelt Island is we have a lot of community parks scattered all over the place with various features. I just feel that we have this in the meeting as a marker for further discussion also, because we'd like to have uniform hours of operation. We would like to have rules. If we have large groups, we'd like to have a permitting process in place so they're manageable. And again, fair usage is required. And one thing I'd like to mention, especially with the public here, this is Roosevelt Island, and we view it as our small town. However, we're part and parcel of the city and state, and so availability of spaces cannot be denied to people who are not Roosevelt Island residents. So, recently some of the board members may have noticed some discussion about swimming in Sports Park. So, part of what we will do about that will be to have a reservation system. That will give us an idea of what the head count is. Part of the reservation system will be a fee structure that, as for other usages on Roosevelt Island, favors residents, such as using tennis or sports facilities. However, it will not exclude non-residents and will not be so dramatically expensive as to be exclusionary. So we have hopes about that. In the future, in future meetings, I'd like to be talking specifically about hours and usages for the parks, with the idea that we converge everything and have a more uniform standard that people can understand, and appropriate waterproof times and notices put up around the parks, so that we know what's going on with those.
I'm sorry.
You think more about
what I've noticed, and what we noticed, Jack and myself noticed, that there are differing times. The Lighthouse was 12 midnight, which came as a shock to me, because I don't know any parks that are open till 12 midnight, because it's really a horror for the PSB or the New York police. And Jack is here really to speak about what they do in New York City very briefly, that they do have fairly consistent times, except for those areas that have lights, and that you have lights for a purpose. But I believe that Jack is familiar with the time and why the time are important to have the consistency.
Usually,
Can I interrupt a moment? I don't know if everyone in the community has met Jack McManus. I introduced him before as our acting director of public safety, but Jack.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Hi. The consistency is important. We have kind of a unique situation here where our parks, take Lighthouse for instance. The hospital is right on top of the park. So we've had some issues because the sign says 12 o'clock, which is, in my experience, it's very similar to Charlene's. I haven't seen a place that has a park that's open at 9 o'clock. In the city, it's either dusk or 9 o'clock. And one of the reasons is it tends to be a gathering place late at night if it's left open for younger people that may want to make a lot of noise. And I know where the challenge on the island here is we don't have a lot of places for the younger people. But it would be much easier for us to enforce what we have to enforce if there was a consistency to the times. I know South Point is 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And Jack, I don't
we're
know.
not prepared to commit to a time tonight, are we?
And we're not prepared to commit to time. And also, as an adjunct to this conversation, some people have brought up where should young people congregate, and maybe we should look at another area that they can congregate that can be, easily policed, so that there's no, issues, and it has to be in an area that is not near all the buildings, because that's not to say that the young people will go there, by the way. You know, we can establish a place, and dollars to donuts, they won't go there, but at least we could say, we tried. Yeah.
If you have different times,
Yeah,
they'll be jumping from one park to
Right.
another, and then it just becomes,
following them. So it's an area that we have to discuss, and
When we say park, do we include Capobianco Field and Firefighters Field and the ball fields?
If
Like,
they
is
have
it the park?
lights, no. I mean, because that's why they have lights. They have night
So they
things.
shut the lights down at 11.
And that's really,
Yeah,
And, I see Zog Sports kids going down past the trails at, 5 after 11 every night. There's a, New York City parks, are very often fenced, or usually fenced. Gates can be closed, like you can close at, South Point Park. You could erect a fence without too much trouble to block, Lighthouse Park, both sides. There are other areas in New York City, such as Central Park, Prospect Park, which are nominally closed at dusk, but which can't be closed, because they're just too big, and, they're not fenced, they're wide open spaces. And those places can be a little adventurous at night, even in this modern day and age.
Yes.
I think what we need to do, just a thought, I don't know if I'm totally sure of this, but there are a lot of areas on Roosevelt Island which should not be fenced, and soon won't be. Meditation steps, the park just south of, Blackwell, that area, and the lawn south of your building,
Right.
stuff like that. So we can maintain free access to them and still control them without fencing them. But the parks at both ends of the island, one is fenced, and I think the other one should be.
that's actually something that was discussed, and I'm glad that's being brought up now, because I didn't know what the sense of the board was, and I still don't, but I'm glad you brought it up.
I hadn't really thought about
Discuss
the
it.
issue, but you bring it forward, and the way you describe the issue makes sense to me.
Other than 4th of July, is this a problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a detail of officers that are assigned to Lighthouse Park consistently through the summer, over the weekends, for these type of issues.
So if we put game hours to South Point Park and Lighthouse Park and nothing else, would that solve the problem? See, I happen to be of the opinion that there are tons of places for the kids to hang out on this island, way more than when I was a kid. I mean, the meditation steps in Blackwell Park, Capobianco Field, and Firefighters Field, and the whole open area by Southtown. I think there's tons of places, the whole waterfront, the whole promenade.
I don't disagree with you. This is something that has been brought up, and, it should be discussed, and you're quite right. I think there's enough places. One of the issues that I think it has to be discussed, because I don't know, and maybe you guys know more than I do, and I'm sure you do, as to how the island works, is that these places that people can hang out are near the buildings. And what you get are the noise complaints from the building, because the kids are hanging out, although, meditation steps are there for hanging out.
Right.
So that's, and they say, and a group said that, well, we have to have a place that's not gonna bother anybody, and where they can congregate. Now, I don't know if that's viable here, because, do you do it at Lighthouse Park, and, which in the summer invites everybody from off island, on island, that's where they congregate. There is a problem. And that's far from everyone, but it creates a problem. So, I don't know. I mean, this is something that is a subject for discussion, I believe. Because one thing is clear, that we have to have some consistency.
Yeah.
The other stuff is, adjunct to that.
Well, what are other neighborhoods in New York City? Don't they have the same issues we have? Big open areas where people hang out in front of buildings and things?
Stoops.
Well,
Schools and stuff.
Yeah.
And then if it gets out of hand, you call the
Exactly.
whatever.
And, in the summertime,
Really?
traditionally in the summertime, there are a lot of noise complaints,
Right.
and it's a matter of responding. If people are out, especially on a night like this, if somebody doesn't have air conditioning,
Oh,
I
it
help
could be
them.
on.
I mean, but
We should do
please
that.
keep it down. And we had a lot of noise complaints this past weekend, probably in large part due to the weather. But then, as people are moved along, and and asked to quiet down if it seems to be, you know, a particularly loud group. But the as far as the closing of the parks, it's pretty much enforced citywide.
I don't have any problem with closing the parks again, I just don't want gates all over and fences everywhere. I mean,
No,
we
no,
gotta
I
leave
don't
this
think
open,
that's,
let
I
kids
think
hang
the
out,
Lighthouse
somewhere.
Park is something that we would prefer to see gated. Other than that, that's, otherwise we have a completely gated
Yeah,
community,
right.
it's like sort of not good. So I agree with you on that, but the Lighthouse, I mean, I'm glad it was brought up because that's something that we really, first of all, it may be dangerous, you know, so.
I'm curious though, have there been problems in Lighthouse Park,
Well,
to your knowledge?
only, I'm fairly new,
I know.
very new actually. And, you know, when I saw July 4th approaching, I began to ask staff members what it was like the prior year. And it was problematic at Lighthouse Park. Folks came in without a proper permit and had a sound device, basically a disc jockey. And a lot of people, several hundred people came in, and it seemed like some of the kids on the island may have invited some of their friends from around the neighborhood, so there were a lot of people in there, and we didn't expect it. With a permitting process, we would at least be able to anticipate some issues and respond to it a little better. So last year, we were kind of surprised. This year, you know, we were as prepared as we could be, but it's very difficult to manage that park because of, I know it's not like Central Park, David, but it's, you know, you can get in any number of ways, so it was difficult to manage, and it was we thought 10 o'clock was a reasonable time to close it, and we, you know, put some temporary signs up, but it was problematic trying to close it at 10 o'clock. Everybody was pointing to the 12 o'clock sign, which they may have not noticed any other time before, but and we began to get noise complaints from the vicinity of the hospital.
I kinda understand that because it's near the buildings, but suppose we wanted to keep South Point Park open all night, let the kids hang out there. What kind of problems would that cause? There's only 2 entrances.
I don't know, I think we might be inviting some of the, you know, the issues, you know, I think we would tend to get a lot more noise complaints that way, and it I don't know, I just don't.
But it's so far removed from
Yeah,
the
it
nearest
is far
building.
removed, but the lighting is not proper, you're gonna get a lot of kids, and not that they're bad, they're just kids.
Yeah.
A big group of kids, especially if we have a lot of off-islanders, which you can't prevent, that are there. It's a hot night tonight, you're gonna check every can that's covered with a bag to check whether it's beer. I mean, it's sort of inviting
Yes.
a not so nice thing.
It would be one of the few parks open, so a lot of kids would.
Right.
We
You
find out-
know, across the
No, I'm
way
just
as
thinking if
well.
we're looking
It'd be
for a
like-
place for them to hang out.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah, but
it's,
From
It'll be
concentrating in one
like
place.
1,000.
but I think
With
you're,
only 2
I
entrances,
think you're
that's
quite right. There
It's
are
far
like the
away.
meditation steps that are not right on, you know, and South Point Park, I think would, if we opened it up, it would become,
And also, it also becomes an issue where, how like the parks are open in the surrounding areas, I don't know. I think everyone would agree that some of the problems we've had here, a lot of people think it's caused by, younger people who are not from Roosevelt Island, and are from some of the surrounding areas. I don't know if that's factual or not.
It's partially, that's true and not true. That is, it's, I was on the street, I was in my office on both the last 4th of July, and I saw the mob scene on the street, last year. And these were kids who were not from here, but, we know the kids are territorial.
Well, here's what I was gonna say, if you let me finish the point, is that if you have this one park open all night, as was suggested, and the parks in the surrounding areas are closed at a certain time, and whether or not it's a lot of kids from here, a few kids from here, there's a lot more kids from the other areas, they all come here.
That's a good
That was the
point.
only point I was.
And Rainy Park, which would close around 9 o'clock. You know, it'd be a canoe ride over to us, and
it's over.
but growing up not too far from here, I know that,
That area.
And we keep talking about kids, but I think we have to introduce what we're talking about, this problem. The notion of gang conflicts. And that's what I meant about kids here, or kids that are gang oriented. I remember one crew here, other crews, other neighborhoods may not be flying in the same colors. It's automatically in schoolyards and schoolrooms and parks on Roosevelt Island and anywhere else. And it's another reason you have to control. And you can't just do a laissez-faire thing. People, it makes no sense.
Okay,
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I think it would really be a shame to close off Lighthouse Park. The island is 2 miles tip to tip. The southern end is partially closed off. People don't go to Goldwater, and the only people that go down in that area at night, really, people who walk or people who ride bicycles, or, it's such a small island. To start closing off areas that, maybe for 4th of July or Labor Day, when there's a problem, to try to, do something about those problem weekends, but to start cutting off areas, this is not only about the kids. People walk and people fish and people ride their bikes at night, and people enjoy that things aren't closed off. To start closing off areas, I think, I just, it just rubs me the wrong, just in terms of what Roosevelt Island is, and that it is small, and to start closing off areas, I think is a shame.
Howard, I was wondering if is there an ETA on restoring the bridges to the lighthouse?
Yeah, we just got the RFPs back and being evaluated, and we should go out a couple of weeks to the contract.
Is that likely to be available this summer?
The bridges in the fall.
In the fall.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have we had problems on weekend nights other than 4th of July?
well, we had, this past weekend, from what I have been able to look at and see since I've been here, an inordinate amount of noise complaints this past weekend. And right through the night, up until six
From
o'clock.
Lighthouse Park, though?
Not necessarily. Island-wide.
Island-wide, yeah, I think we're gonna get them island-wide.
And more actually in front of the deli.
Yeah.
A few.
And I understand Vicky's point, a lot of people just wanna take walks down there and they wanna stroll, and it's so hot at night. That's why they wanna go down there, and if we're not having an inordinate, but I completely understand where you're coming from, we don't want kids coming over and drinking and all that kind of stuff and causing trouble. But if that's only happening on the major holidays and not really so much on the weekends, could we try it and see?
We'll track it on.
Yeah, let's
let's
track
track
it and see
it
what kind of
and see
complaints we
what
have,
we
and see where the
have,
problems are.
Because, first of all, I don't think 9 o'clock is unreasonable for anybody. I mean, for safety issues, to tell you the truth, 9 o'clock is pretty late and it's dark and, but we'll track it. I think midnight and having an inconsistent time is sort of,
It would be, it would be
A
a lot
problem.
more difficult for us to react to something rather than to try to prepare for it and have a reference point, whether it be 9, 10 o'clock, whatever. it may
yeah,
be.
right now, we're closing it
But
at
we'll-
10 for the summer, per board. Because I requested that we close it at 10 for the whole summer, including July 4th weekend, so that's what we're doing. And I think 10 o'clock is, it's pretty late for most people.
Well, just when you're used to having things open, and then you're gonna close off an area, people,
We're not
Yeah,
really
it was a
closing it
suggestion.
off,
Right.
it's sort of like it closes, the park closes at 10. If there is not a PSD officer there and somebody wanders on, it's not an arrest situation, it's
Right, but
just
if
that,
you gate it, it'll be closed.
that's a different story, that, we're not even close to that.
Oh.
I mean, that's a
Just a
decision
suggestion.
by the board, and that's like something we're gonna do, not even close.
Oh, okay.
We're really still discussing the times.
Okay.
Is that not correct?
Yeah, we're discussing the times. Another element in this is eventually we will have cameras, so that might be of some utility in controlling the spaces.
It's gonna be done, it's gonna be done, we're gonna beat them into submission, it's gonna be done.
But through the summer, I'll be able to gather the reports together and keep an eye on where the hotspots might be.
Okay, great. And
When you're talking about Lighthouse Park, are you also including the pathways that surround it? Because people may not want to go inside the park itself, but they like walking around the pathway on the water. Are those two different things, or is that the same thing?
No, it's the same thing. The
We're
park
just
is the park.
talking, we're just right now.
No,
we're
it's just a question. I don't
No,
know.
yeah, no, I know, but I don't have an answer, I don't have an answer.
I mean,
Always keep
promenade,
in mind that a
I know.
resident blogger is also a lawyer.
yeah.
Not in the road.
But putting notice that the park is closed is another way of saying that we are not in the business of actively keeping it safe and available after those hours. So that if a person happens to go walking at 2 a.m, they walk where they like and wherever it's unobstructed. But, what can you say?
I don't think we're at the point where we've walked out and assessed and have a schematic yet, so I think that's a little bit ahead of us.
Okay.
I don't think that path is technically part of the park.
That was my
I
question.
think that path is technically part of Kohler, because it goes right behind Kohler, and there's barricades on between the path and the park itself, which makes it look like it's not part of the park. So when people wanna go all the way
You're talking
around.
about the
The
promenade.
promenade goes
Lighthouse.
around.
Yeah, but that promenade would be part of the park.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what I'm
that's
saying,
question.
that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the promenade or the?
No, the promenade right on the water. Yeah.
That goes right to the tip.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely part of the park,
Yeah.
in my view anyway.
Yeah, we're not talking about keep off the
Well,
grass.
listen, nobody knows for sure yet right now. It's something we're gonna consider down the road. Point's been raised, we'll consider it down the road.
Okay.
If the chairman
Yeah.
so wants to move on, you should
Right,
probably.
I'd like to move the discussion along.